We're in the south of France today and we're talking about LLCs. Now, if you're using an LLC in Europe, you may be about to be royally fucked. And let me tell you why. There are three main problems with having an LLC in Europe: permanent establishment, CFC rules, and estero vestizione, called in Italian. I think the translation in English is dummy foreign company. And respectively, CFC is basically when you manage and own a company offshore that has a very low tax rate. So in Europe, you can't legally do that. You can't be resident in a European country and have a company in Dubai or in Hong Kong. They'll just attribute all the profits straight to you and tax you. Permanent establishment is when they'll consider the profits of the company to be derived from an establishment in a certain country, which is likely the country where you're a tax resident of. So if you're a resident of the UK or Italy, for example, if you're a resident of Italy and you have a company in the US, for example, the LLC, they'll say, actually, the profits of this company are attributable to a permanent establishment, to a place of management in Italy. So we want to tax in Italy all the profits that have been sourced from Italy. Now, if you're a resident in Italy and your US LLC doesn't have any employees or anything in the US, then all the profits are going to be taxed in Italy. Final one, estero vestizione or dummy foreign company. That's also going to be a problem. They're going to say, actually, you opened a company in a lower tax jurisdiction only to save in taxes, which we can't do, right? So they say that it's, a dummy foreign company, that you've just opened it to save in taxes, but there's no reason for you to have it there. So again, there's fine, there's penalties. You don't want to go there. So bottom line, if you're following me until now, well done. This is super important. I see you having an LLC and you're still in Europe. No, you cannot be a tax resident of nowhere. I'll put the link in the description why. But let me tell you, your tax residency cannot be in Europe with the LLC. No reason whatsoever. Unless you've got multiple owners, you've got directors, you've got like a CEO, like a C-suite. But if you're watching this, you're probably making anywhere from like 100K to like $1 million a year, something like that. So you probably don't have like board of directors and managers and all this stuff. So like if you open a company, then you are probably going to be the management. Literally what happens if you have an LLC in Europe is you're facing all of these problems. You're getting fines, you're getting taxed. You don't want to do that. Obviously, if you have another company as a holding, like that's a different idea. But if you're watching this, you're probably worried about this and, you should be. You may be asking, okay, fine. If I live in a country in Europe, then it doesn't work because there are these regulations, right? And I can't have my LLC in Europe. Fine. But what if you're a digital nomad? What if you're a digital nomad? And to answer that question, we need to see where you actually spend your time, if it's in Europe or if it's outside of Europe. If it's outside of Europe, you can actually get away with it. Reason being, if you spend 3 months in Colombia, 3 months in Thailand, 3 months in Bali, and only 3 months in Italy, now you're only actually spending 3 months in Europe. Now, obviously, you'll want to have a tax residency somewhere else. You may be thinking Paraguay. Again, I've made a video about Paraguay. You can go and check that out. You're going to need another tax residency, but at least if you have another tax residency somewhere else, and you've got out of your European, of your home country's tax system, that's fine. But if you spend most of your time in Europe, we're in the south of France, you want to do European summer, and then you want to go to the mountains in, I don't know, Norway, maybe you want to go to Eastern Europe, you want to go to Italy. If you spend most of your time in Europe, this doesn't work. And the reason for this is because EU country actively cooperate to attribute taxing rights. So what does that mean? Let me explain it to you. If you spend, of the 12 months, you're an Italian citizen, for example, 3 months in Italy, 3 months in France, 3 months in Spain, and maybe 3 months outside of Europe, right? What happens is, for tax purposes, Europe almost behaves like as its own country, as one big country. Because what happens if you get audited, because obviously we're talking about audits, if no one finds out about you, you can do whatever you want, right? But we're trying to build a setup that works if if a tax officer were to check it. Because if you're trying to hide stuff, right, then, might as well just do tax evasion. But that's not what we do here. We're trying to build structures that work even if we were to get audited by a tax officer. We want a tax officer to see this and say, okay, yeah, this is legit. So I digress. Apologies. What happens is, if you're Italian, for example, and you spent 9 months in Europe, what happens is, if you get audited, Italy will go, hold on, this guy spent 9 months in Europe And bear in mind that there are no borders in Europe. Like, you can literally drive from Italy to France. Like, no one even knows that you've left Italy. Like, which is why I was saying, like, even, you know, for tax purposes, for immigration, like, it's almost like one big country. And Italy will say, okay, no one has taxed this lad, but he spent 9 months in Italy. Who is going to tax him? Like, we want to tax him. Italy, we want to tax him because he spent 9 months in Europe. Now, most of the times, the country from which you have a passport is going to tax you, right? If you're Italian and you spend 3 months in Italy, 3 in France, 3 in Spain, France and Spain are going to accept the fact that Italy is going to tax the guy. Obviously, if he's making a lot of money, you know, France and Spain might want a little say. But bottom line is, Italy's going to be like, hey, this guy's been 3 months in Italy, but he's been 9 months in Europe. No one has taxed him. Are you okay with us taxing him since he's an Italian resident? And what do you think France and Spain are going to be like? They're going to be, yeah, of course. Whereas flip side, like I was saying before, if instead of going in France and Spain, you go to other countries outside, like Thailand, Vietnam, Mexico, Colombia, whatever, these countries don't cooperate because each country, you know, has its own tax rules. And also in Europe, right? Also in Europe, each country has its own tax rules. But if you're out of each tax system, like if you're not a tax resident in any of these systems, not in Colombia, not in Brazil, not in Thailand, not in, you know, whatever, then it's not as if those days are like added on to like your stay in Italy. Whereas it's almost as if you spend time in Europe, like these days are like added on to your stay in Italy. And this is, you know, assuming you have no tax residency, you have Paraguay like as your tax residency. This doesn't work. If you're traveling in Europe, have a Paraguayan tax residency, like fuck you, it doesn't work. Go to Cyprus or go to Estonia. Paraguay doesn't work. But that's the thing. That is why it doesn't work. Like, if you're traveling Europe, it just doesn't work. You're thinking, what about if it's UK citizens traveling to Europe? Again, like, you are a bit better off right now because of Brexit. Like, because of Brexit, it's unlikely that Europe will catch you in their tax net. You probably can't even stay 9 months in Europe, right? Because you'd need like proper visas. So like, don't worry about it too much if you're from the UK. But if you've got a European passport, like, be careful. And I've mentioned you the problems. Like, these are the problems with the LLC, the permanent establishment, CFC, dummy foreign company. Like, it's full of these. There are no borders in the EU. There are no borders. If you're in Europe, you're free to travel around. And if you don't have a solid, and I'm saying solid, like an actual solid tax residency somewhere else, then you're going to be taxed. And you're going to be taxed in one or more, depending on what you're doing, European countries. That's the way it is. And as I mentioned already, as always, if they don't catch you, you can get away with anything. But we're trying to build a structure that works and actually holds. I think about killing someone, it's going to get demonetized. Imagine killing someone and no one finds out. You got away with it. Same with tax evasion. But like, does that mean you should? No, of course not. So right now you may be thinking, my structure works. This Donnie I spoke to online told me that it works. The truth is, yeah, until someone checks, and then it doesn't. I beg you, don't take shortcuts. If you want to talk to me one-on-one, you can book a consultation call using the first link below. And I hope you enjoyed this video. I will see you in the next one.